Welcome to tonight's live stream. I'm going to get started in a minute. I just need to let everybody know that the live stream is going on. Then I'm going to get started on tonight's stream.
Monday.com is a platform to manage any team and any project. Marketing can.
Good morning, Ja Rules. Randy Washington, what's up? Good night, Nightingale Wednesday afternoon. What's going on, Randy Washington, Bomboard, David? I'm glad to see you all here at the stream. I'm getting ready to get started on this stream. And tonight's live stream is about understanding your value as a man. Now, when it comes down to most men, they really don't understand their value as a man. Oftentimes, most men these days, over the last 50 years, have no understanding of their worth, and they oftentimes sell themselves extremely short when it comes to life. Now, the reason why so many men out here sell themselves short is because they don't really understand what their true value is as a man. And when it comes down to most men out here, again, over the last 50 years, they have grown up in a feminist culture. And because they have grown up in a feminist culture, they have been taught by their mothers that, and even in some cases their fathers, that they are to have less value and to put themselves in a second best position from the beginning. And when it comes down to a lot of males who come from the single mother households, they usually have been trained from birth to put themselves in a second best position. And when you put yourself in a second best position, you are lowering your value to others. And when you lower your value to others, then people out here, they don't take you seriously. And that's why so many men out here are struggling right now, because they have lowered their value as men and they don't see their worth in God's natural order, and they don't see their value to the living God. Because when the living God created man, he created man first, and he created men to have a significant value to his order, and he created men to have a significant value to his standard of the world. Now, when it comes down to the living God and how he sees men as somebody who are extremely valuable. He sees the value in men because he created, again, man first. And because he created man first, he created him to be a steward over the earth. So that's an incredibly important position for a man to have in being the steward over the earth. That means that the man was made to be the responsible over the entire earth, and it means that the man, as God's steward, is someone who he valued because he granted him power through responsibility. So he gave him incredible power because in this position as a steward, he gave him dominion over the earth, and he made him responsible over taking care of the earth. And as his steward, this is a role people don't really understand that God made for men. He saw the value in men from minute one. And when it comes down to a lot of men out here these days, they don't understand the value of men as related to God's natural order, nor do they understand how important men are to the living God. Because when it comes down to the man, after being created first, he also is the being with the direct connection to the living God. Because when it comes down to men, men were made in the image of God and his son, Jesus Christ. And this is something that most men don't really understand about why they have a value from the jump, because you are valuable as a man because you were the first creation of the Most High, and you were the creation who he made to have dominion over the earth. You were the creation he made to be a steward over the earth, and you were the creation that he made to be a leader of the world. And when it comes down to most men today, they don't understand those roles and why they are important. And because they don't understand those roles and why they are important, this is why so many men don't understand their value as men in society, because the man is the head of God's natural order on earth. Now, over the last 50 years, most boys who grew up in the age of feminism learned that being a man didn't have any value. And this was taught to boys and young men in your feminist media over the last 50 years, which taught us that being a man was bad, being a man was something not to be valued, being a man was not something to be appreciated, and being a man was something that was supposedly terrible. Because according to the feminists, men were considered to be destructive, men were considered to be violent. But when it comes down to the feminist idea of men, they see men as less than. And what is sad over the last 50 years is they have taught 2 to 3 generations of young boys not to see the value of being men. And because this culture has been passed on for 2 to 3 generations, what has happened is many boys just don't understand their value as men. They don't understand their worth as men. And they oftentimes wind up not actualizing their potential on this earth. And the reason why they don't wind up actualizing their potential is because they start out from their birth learning a culture which teaches everyone that the boy is second best, and he should be somebody who should put himself second. And when a boy puts himself in a second position from an early age, he never goes out here to accomplish anything of value. And even worse, he never actualizes his potential to do God's work on earth. And this is the big problem with many men out here, because this core foundation of their values is the thing that really messes up a lot of guys out here. They start out believing that they are second best, and because they believe that they are second best, they never start to see their value as men. And when it comes down to men, again, men have tremendous value. And this is something men really need to understand. You have tremendous value, and you have to find your value as a man. Because in order for you to go out here and do what God set you to do on this earth, do God's work on this earth, and find your purpose in this life, you have to first start out by changing your perception of yourself. And in today's gynocentric and feminist culture, most boys, again, they start out at an early age learning that they really have no value, they have no worth, and the only people who have value are females, and that they are supposed to go out here and please and appease females. And God did not make a man to go out here and please and appease a female, because in his order, he created the man to be the head of the family, and he created the woman to be the helpmeet, to help and support the man and to serve the man. But these days, thanks to feminists, the order has become completely reversed. And instead of the man being the direct connection to God, understanding his value in God's order, he's out here looking to elevate the female above himself. And when the man elevates the female above himself, what he is doing is not only lowering his value as a man, and he's also disrupting God's natural order by making this woman into a god that he places before the living God. And when he does that, he violates God's commandments in both the Old Testament with the 10 Commandments, where God himself said, "Thou shalt have no other gods before me." And the commandment that Jesus made to say to love the Lord with all your heart, soul, and your spirit, because when he goes out here and elevates women above the living God, he's really taking himself out of God's natural order. And that's what so many men have been doing over the last 2 to 3 generations as related to manhood. They have been taken out of God's natural order, and they're following this feminist order that has been created out here. And under this feminist order, we've had 2 to 3 generations out here worshiping women, putting women on pedestals, and making gods out of women. When they do that, they take themselves out of their direct connection to the living God. And when they take themselves out of that direct connection to the living God, what they are doing is going out here and taking themselves on a road where they will never actualize their potential as men, and they will never be able to become the type of men who can go on to do God's work on earth. And even worse, they'll never be able to become the kind of stewards who can take responsibility for the planet that God has put them in charge of. Because when it comes down to your man, he has to understand his value in order to go out and do God's work. And when it comes down to a man, that value, again, it starts from day one. You have to understand what makes you valuable. It is not education. It is not riches. It is not resources. It is understanding that you are a creation of the living God. And because God has made you a man, he has given you a tremendous power. And that power is to be the steward over this earth. And as the steward over this earth and the leader, you have this value because God has made you to be someone significant in his order. When he makes a male, he makes somebody who he wants to be part of his order. And this is something that a lot of men are not getting these days because in our gynocentric culture, it is all about elevating the female to an artificial position, but not putting the man in his actual position. Because the big problem with most men these days is that they don't know their actual position because our society doesn't want the man in his leadership position, because when it comes down to most corporations, they like making money off of the woman. And the reason why they like making money off of the woman is because they know that the female is emotional. And because she is emotional, she buys on impulse, and they can profit off empowering the female and by having her go out here and spend this money, and they can profit off of her by having her in her feelings insecure about who she is and who she's supposed to be. Whereas a man, because he understands he has a direct connection to the living God, understands his value and understands that he gets his worth not from products, but he gets his worth from his relationship with the living God. And that's what a God centered man understands. He understands that his worth comes from the living God because he understands that his worth comes from the fact that God created him to be a man, and being made in the image of God and Jesus Christ, this is what makes him valuable in God's natural order. That's something that most people don't know, and it's something they haven't been taught because many of the pastors out here, they refuse to preach that to their mostly female congregations. And the reason why they don't want to preach that to the female congregations is because, again, the pastor makes more money off of the woman's emotions and making her believe that she has to go out here and give contributions to the church in an effort to try to get into heaven. When in actuality, when it comes down to your getting into heaven, it was already done by Jesus Christ, who died on the cross for everybody's sins. And when it comes down to getting into heaven, it's all about you accepting God's gift, Jesus's gift of salvation that he gave on the cross. It's nothing you can do, but when it comes down to many females, they have been bought into this whole idea of they have to work their way into heaven by these pastors out here. And this is because your female wants to have power, but in your church, and they want to have power in civilization. But when they take power, again, it takes them out of God's natural order, because God's order, the woman would have actual power in her helpmeet role that would actually give her more power. But when most women believe that they can get this power by going outside of God's natural order. And a lot of them are miseducated because in our society, they need miseducated females in charge, and they need miseducated females with economic power and control in order to maintain their consumer-based civilization. Because as long as the female is in control of the pocketbook in the home and control of the economic resources in the home, what happens is, instead of the man looking to go out here and build something of substance as related to wealth, what it happens is everything is focused on consuming products, and that leads to the household being in debt. So that's one of the things that they do to devalue the man, because if they devalue the man, then they can make profit off of the woman. So that's why they don't want people to understand the value of man, the value of men in society, and the valuable contributions that men can make once they understand their value as a man. Because once a man understands his value, then he can start focusing on making efforts to actualize his potential. Because once a man understands that his value does not come from things that he has learned in this consumerist gynocentric society, like having expensive clothes, expensive shoes, big cars, and making efforts to win the attention and approval of females, then he can start focusing on doing work that God wants him to do on earth. Now, when it comes down to most men these days, the reason why they don't understand their value as men, again, is because in our gynocentric and feminist culture, we are taught to put the man second from day one. And when the man is raised in a place like a single mother household, he learns from day one to make a woman a god because he has learned to submit to female authority. And as he grows older, he grows to learn how only to seek the attention and approval of the female. And as he's going out here to seek the attention and approval of the female, he is out here chasing things that will get her attention and approval. He's going out here buying things that hopes like expensive sneakers or expensive clothes or expensive cars, or he's driving around in cars with big stereos in them, all seeking to get the attention and approval of the woman who he is, made into a god, and worshiping the female as some sort of god. And because he feels like he cannot please his god, this is what frustrates many men and makes them angry. This is something that makes many men deeply troubled. And this is what has left many men to become these beta males, and these beta males not being able to set a course in their life towards any sort of success or setting down a road to finding their path to doing God's work on earth. Everything in their life is focused primarily on getting the attention and approval of females. And they believe that if they get the attention and approval of a female, this is some sort of major accomplishment. And it's not a major accomplishment to get the attention and approval of a female. It is a accomplishment when you find your purpose in the living God. Thank you for the donation, David Little. Why do people kill single? Is that single men or single moms? And treat them like social outcasts, but when you gain wealth, they want to be around you. Okay, well, they kill single men because they're looking to compete. And when it comes down to a lot of men, they will kill another man to get the attention and approval of other women. And they'll treat other men like social outcasts because they want to get that attention and approval from other women. And when you gain wealth, they want to be your friend because they want to be able to get closer to you in the hopes of getting close to your resources so that they can hang on in the hopes of getting attention and approval of other women. Am I a priest, Zach? No, I am not a priest. I'm just a common guy who has read the Bible. And as someone who has seen many of our churches not teaching the gospel of the living God, I have a series on YouTube where I talk about sermons your pastor will not preach. And when it comes down to your pastor, he refuses to preach these sermons because when it comes down to him, he is all about elevating the woman and he does that in order to get at her economic resources, and he's about getting her attention and approval, and he wants to keep the woman under his control so that he can continue to enrich himself at her expense. Because when it comes down to the pastor, he wants to keep the church a gynocentric institution because that's how he profits in the long run. If you go to any church, in most cases, you'll notice that there it's mostly men and they're single mother, and it's not no men. No men are in the church. There's no men in the church. It's mostly women in the church, and it's mostly women who are single mothers with their children. So if you go to any church, you'll notice that from the jump, you're going to see no men in that church because that's a gynocentric institution, and the pastor wants to keep it a gynocentric institution because that's how he profits, because he knows if men come into that church, what he will do, they will do is they are not going to go out here and start preaching your Malachi 3:10, which talks about tithes. What your man is going to do is go to that pastor and take him to the New Testament and start talking about what Jesus said about being to give as you are able to give. So that's why they don't want the man in the church. Moreover, they don't want the man in the church because the man is going to start teaching the gospel, and he's going to start teaching the gospel more towards application of everyday life. And he's not going to start talking this prosperity preaching or this blessing material. He's going to be talking about everyday application. And that's something that the pastor will not preach because that does not benefit him in the long run. When it comes down to your pastors, they see the church as a business. It is not about saving souls. It is about making money. So that's why your pastor will not preach these sermons. So I want to preach these sermons because I don't want to see people lose their souls, and I want to be able to give them a little bit of an understanding from myself who has read the Bible. And I'm an amateur at this, and I wanted to show how simple it is, because if a child could understand this, then why can't your pastor go out here and preach it? Oh, you meant single men's boundaries. Well, when it comes down to again, these guys, they want to step in the boundaries because they want to compete and they have no respect for those men. But when you gain wealth, then they want to come in here and go out here and be your friend because they want to get rewards from it. It's just part of how some of these guys are. They want to step in. They don't have any respect for a man unless he has resources, and they want to hang on your resources so they can get in to other social groups. So it's a form of monkey branching, especially when it comes down to these beta males. They do stuff like that, and it's just something that they do. Yeah, born savior. A lot of these men, they are male versions of the women, and yeah, they have learned these feminine ways. And when the man learns these feminine ways, what happens is these guys, they've learned to value being a woman, but they have not really learned the value of being a man. And learning the value of being a man is only something I believe you can learn by first having that God-centered foundation. Because when you have the God-centered foundation, you will learn the definitions of manhood. And then after you learn those foundations, then you can start learning lessons in manhood by someone like a God-centered father. Because when it comes down to a God-centered father, he is going to teach his son a foundation in God's definition of manhood and teach him the worth of being a man under God's standards. So that's what a man is going to learn in a God-centered home. He's going to learn the true definition of manhood from the living God, and he's going to learn that value of men as related to God's natural order. So that's why a father is very important for a boy to have in his life, because it's only a man who can teach him that value. Now, men also teach a boy a value as a man Also not only directly by teaching him these core values, but he also teaches him indirectly by his actions. And a God-centered man teaches a boy value as a man by modeling manhood, and he teaches that model of manhood, and the boy will learn indirectly through his actions the importance of a man. And the thing that helps a man learn value is a man learning that because God has made him first and made him steward over the earth, he has to put himself first. And the man putting himself first is not a selfish thing. This is what many feminists want you to believe about men being first, and they want you to minimize your own value. And what they want you to do is put yourself second. And again, if a man puts himself second, what he's doing is lowering his value not only to others, he also lowers his value to his family. And this is something a lot of men make the mistake of by believing they have to go out here and please the woman by taking care of her. But when it comes down to the man, he has to put himself first because that's how he shows his value. And it also shows how he models God's natural order. Because when the man puts himself first, he is saying that he values himself so much that he's going to take care of himself so he can take care of the entire family. And putting yourself first is not, again, a selfish thing. It is taking care of your health. It is taking care of your hygiene. It is taking care of your bills and taking care of your finances. And it is taking care of your mental health. And all of that has to be done in order for you to be able to take care of the family. But your feminists and people on the left, they want you to believe that you have to be this soft male, and that if you become this soft male that goes out of his way to put himself in the background, people will respect you. And that's not what God made you to be. I mean, it goes into a point that David Little made as related to the church. Thank you for the donation again, where he says a lot of churches seem like simp making factories. And again, that's because they are gynocentric institutions, not under the standard of the living God. Because when you are under the standard of the living God, you understand the value of men, and you will understand that God did not make the man to be passive. He did not make the man to be submissive. He made the man to be a leader, and a leader is someone who's supposed to be assertive. He is supposed to be someone with confidence, because when it came down to Jesus, Jesus spoke with authority. And if we are aspiring to be Christ-like, we have to understand that Jesus was never a soft person. Jesus was someone who was extremely assertive, and he spoke with great authority. He took on many of the hypocrites, like the Pharisees and the Sadducees, people who had incredible power in Rome. He confronted them. He confronted their hypocrisy. And he did this with great courage, with great confidence. And as the Son of God had that type of confidence, that's the way men are supposed to be. But your pastors, because they want the attention and approval of the female, what they do is teach us to be submissive, because they want to be able to the only men to have power in the community. And they need soft males in the community, because when you have soft males in the community, they can be the only ones with power. Now, when it comes down to the living God and Jesus, they want us to have power. And in order to get that power, we have to go and really understand God's natural order, and why we need to submit to only the living God and Jesus, his son. Because the living God and Jesus, his son, they want us to have an abundant life. And what's happening with most men is they're not able to get towards that abundant life because they have learned a series of extremely dysfunctional ideals and ideologies over the last 50 years, and those ideologies have taught them to devalue themselves as men. And as they take in this culture that teaches them to lower their value, they never get a chance to receive God's blessings in this world or achieve that abundant life, because a lot of people, they buy into this narrative that that Christians are supposed to be these docile, submissive, passive people. And again, the living God never meant for any Christian to be docile, submissive, or passive. If we look at Jesus and the model that he presented, he meant for followers of Christ to be assertive. He meant for them to stand up for his word and to set a standard for people in the world. And to be Christ-like means you have to have courage if you want to set that example. And it means standing up when people are sitting down. And that's something people aren't teaching in your churches. They're teaching these extremely passive models. And again, that's so that the pastor can enrich himself at the expense of people, because when it comes down to followers of Christ, they understand they have to answer to the living God at the end of this life, and they have to take account for their actions in this life. So this is something that a man who understands his value in God's natural order is going to have the courage to do. But when it comes down to your soft males who follow this pseudo-Christian religion, these men will sit there and tolerate things and believe that they have to just deal with them and they have to endure until God does something about it. When in actuality, God has already given you the power to do something about it, and he has given you that power and authority to do things. He has given you that power from minute one, because he has set that standard and given you that power as God's leader on and steward over the earth. And it's just about you taking that power and understanding the responsibilities of that power. And that's something that your pastor will not say in the Bible. And it's something that most of these pastors won't talk about. Same Sosa, does a man put his son before his wife or his wife before his son? Now, you have to understand God's natural order. Now, in God's natural order, when it comes down to a man, he has to understand that God is the head of everything. Jesus, his son, is the ruler over the earth. And his wife, the helpmeet and support, is number three. And the children are after that. So when it comes down to a man, he puts his wife after him, and the children go after the wife. So the children usually are the last part of God's natural order, and they usually are the ones are like that. The son would be under the wife, because the son has to be one who has to be prepared and taught by both the mother and the father. So when it comes down to the son, he has to be prepared for manhood. And then after he is prepared for manhood, he then goes out and builds his own home where he finds a wife, and then he leaves the home of his mother and father and cleaves to her. So he's being prepared to stand on his own 2 feet, and then he finds his own wife, and then they support each other. So that's how it works in God's natural order. So when it comes down to a lot of men, that's something they're not getting. K Walker 98, you ever heard of people using the "don't judge me" speech without? Yeah, I've heard of that a lot. And when it comes down to these people, they want to get away with their actions. They don't understand that the living God is going to hold you accountable. And it's something that most people, they don't want to talk about. They want to use that as a shaming tactic to silence you for their bad behavior. But the living God is going to hold you accountable at the end of this life. So that's something that they use. And Well, lift every voice. Do I think the women of this country are worth the trouble, or should men who know their value look elsewhere? Well, when it comes down to men who know their value, they're not looking for women because that's coming from a position of weakness. Men who understand their value, what usually happens is they wind up, the women wind up coming to them. And the reason why those women come to them is because they see a man who understands his value, has his confidence, and what happens with most men who understand their value, they are busy focusing on doing their work. And usually when they do their work, women see them doing their work and they want to help those men out. So usually in those cases, the woman is looking to be a partner to the man, so he doesn't have to leave and go look for another woman. The woman will come to him because when a man understands his purpose and does his work, what happens is those women will come to him, and then he will find a partner suitable for him, because when it comes down to women, there are 4 women for every 1 man, and the woman will let herself be known to that man, usually through things like body language, things like gestures, and then it will come to the man. So when a man understands his value, then people will see him as somebody who has worth, and then they will draw people to them. And this is why it's important for you to understand your value as a man, because when you understand your value as a man, you don't go out here and give away your power by doing things like seeking the attention and approval of others, because only weak men go out here and seek the attention and approval of others and bring their value down by showing that this other thing has more value than them. And that's something that has been a culture cultivated in Western society for the last 50 years, where we've seen these images in media where we see men going out here chasing women, trying to get the attention of the girl of their dreams, and trying to impress women. And again, they teach you and indoctrinate you into this culture where you learn to lower your value and elevate the female to a higher value, when in actuality, when it comes down to the natural order, it is the man going out here and investing in himself and building himself up that attracts women to him. Because when the woman sees the man going out here building, taking care of business, and going out here and taking care of what he needs to take care of in his life, that's where she sees his value. And when she sees his value, then she goes to pursue him. Why is it that most women want to go for the millionaire? It is not because he just has the money. It is also because he has a value as a man, and he shows that value in the way he acts. He shows that value in the way he behaves and conducts himself, and he shows that value in the confidence that he has. Because when it comes down to your rich man, he understands his value in society and he understands his importance to others. But most men, they don't understand that value, and they go out here and they lower their value by watching things like Madison Avenue ads and Hollywood movies and TV shows, which tell them they have to get the attention of a woman, the approval of a woman, and they have to impress her. And what they don't know is what they're doing and what they're seeing is actually going to decrease their value to a woman, and they're going to decrease their value to other people. And what that does is it prevents them from ever achieving one of the things God needs you to have, and that is the intangible of respect. Because the intangible of respect is something that you can only receive once you understand your value as a man. When you understand your value as a man, you understand that in order for me to receive respect from others, I have to respect myself. And the only way you can receive respect from yourself is for you to understand your value as a man. Once you understand your value as a man and you start learning to respect yourself, then others will see you as valuable, and then they will respect you based on what you radiate from the outside, from the inside to the outside. And once they see that respect for yourself from who you are on the inside, that's again what's going to attract people to you. Ace 3567, a curious one, out of curiosity, and this question is for anyone to answer. Any word of advice on how to educate and encourage young boys age 4 to 10 on the intangibles of masculinity? Well, the ways to encourage young boys on the intangibles of masculinity is, one, you have to teach them those intangibles early on, and you have to model those intangibles of masculinity in your behavior. Because when it comes down to small boys, they go on what they see, and they want to emulate men who are out here who have strong masculine presence, strong confidence. And the best way to educate and encourage those young boys is you have to model that in the way you behave, the way you interact with others, and the way you conduct yourself. Because when you see men around you who are putting themselves first, taking care of their own needs, and taking a leadership role, this teaches them that men are valuable, men are important, and that men are someone who deserves respect. And when it comes down to men out here, they have to really watch how they interact with women, because that also teaches boys the value of men. Because if these guys start submitting to women, they're going to learn it's okay to submit to women, and that's going to make them not see a value in the intangible of masculinity. What they have to see is a man showing value of, as from minute one, and showing that he is valuable and important as a man. Lift every voice. Yeah, I believe that there are some women out here who are worth being with. And when it comes down to the women, a lot of them are miseducated. And I believe that we have to really take a moment to educate a lot of these sisters and let them understand that the feminist is taking them off course, and the course that they're taking them on is just going to lead to them being alone and miserable. Now, I go in depth on when it comes down to your women in society in Why 70% of Black Women Are Single. That ebook is available on Amazon.com. And in that book, I go in depth to when it comes down to a lot of these women and the way they are thinking. It is due to many women growing up in the feminist movement of the 60s, and that being taught as a culture to 2 to 3 generations of women who believe that this order of the strong woman is the one to go by. They believe that the female is designed to lead, and they believe that the female can be the head. But once you go outside of God's natural order, you are not going to enter nothing but chaos. And this is why so many women these days are alone, why they are taking mental medications for their mental illnesses, because what's making them mentally ill is them trying to reconcile this feminist culture with God's natural order, not understanding that you cannot fit the feminist gynocentric culture into God's natural order. And it's like putting a square peg in a round hole. And the whole thing is their whole frame of thinking, which is emotional, has them believing that they can do the exact same thing and expect a different result, when those who understand God's natural order understand that is the definition of insanity, in trying to do something that doesn't work and then trying to make it work. Okay, I'm reading through the chats. Same. So yeah, they what they do is they try to use the Christians there. They try to bully people and shame people, and that's not what God is all about. When it comes down to the living God, He is like this. He says, if you disagree with Him, what you do is you shake the dust off your feet and walk away. They don't try to bully or shame people. What they do is just walk away. They just say, okay, if you don't want to believe, you don't want this gift of salvation, you just walk away. But when it comes down to many people who buy into pseudo-Christianity, they don't see how they destroy their testimony by going out here to bully and shame others with these pictures of hell. Yes, people who do not believe in God, yes, they are going to be dealing with the consequences of that. But when it comes down to people, we're just supposed to just let them go on, because maybe God will have another time for those people to want to wake up, and maybe there's another time or another experience that will let them wake up. But as a follower of Christ, you're supposed to put an example to them by just doing what God did and saying, shake the dust off your feet and walk away, and let them go on in their beliefs. Because I look at it this way. I mean, I know many agnostics, many atheists, and I don't try to bully and shame them about my beliefs. I respect them and then move on, because eventually, if God wants them to understand, they will eventually wake up and understand. So that's something I've run into myself, even from Christians myself. A lot of them, they want you to agree with them. They want you to agree with their ideas. And a lot of times they want you to be a part of their religion, but not understanding it is their model of behavior that puts a negative image and a negative perception of the living God in the eyes of others. Because when it comes down to a lot of Christians, they think that if you disagree with them, they have to go into bullying and shaming tactics. And again, they're coming from a very feminine perspective. A masculine perspective is to just let it go. And they want to go out here and they go into histrionics, and it's just a nightmare. And that's why a lot of men don't want to bother with your modern day church, because in the modern day church, it's all about agreeing with the pastor and his ideas, and it's not about following the living God and using application in real life, because it's about application. Because when it comes down to the Bible, again, Jesus said it is doers of the word that He is looking at, not hearers of the word, because doers means action, and actions is how you show an example of Christ to others and show how you aspire to be Christ-like. So that is something people aren't really understanding about the Bible. They're going out here and they're thinking it's about, oh, we go to church every Sunday as related to routine, but their actions on Monday through Saturday are completely egregious, and they don't see the everyday little things that they do to alienate others, and how this leads to them having rotten fruit. Because Jesus said, ye shall know them by their fruits. And when it comes down to most people who believe that they are following Christ, but are actually following the pseudo-Christian religion, what they are doing is they are spoiling their fruit, because their fruit isn't just the things that God blesses them with. It is actually their actions, because it's their actions that are the fruit of their relationship with Christ. And that's something people, they don't get. And again, that all comes from them not understanding their value in God's natural order, not understanding their role in God's natural order, and understanding how they are to have a relationship with Christ. So they don't really understand these foundations. And again, they don't understand the foundations because they were not prepared at an early age. Tip, glad to see you here, even though you're late. Anytime is anytime, because you can just rewind and go back to the beginning of the stream, or watch it later on. But I'm glad to see you here. Yeah, most people in general, they are lukewarm, but the whole thing is that's because they're miseducated, and most churches I believe willfully and intentionally miseducate people because they want to make money off of people. And they believe, because if you actually taught the word of God as it is, what happens is there's no way to make money off it. So what they want to do is make money, and they're not concerned with the souls of people, because it is the soul of people that leads to their values, and the soul of people that leads to their actions and character bearing that fruit on this earth. And this is something your pastor is not really concerned with, as I see in many of these churches. And it's leading to 2 to 3 generations of men not understanding their value as men, because they're not teaching men the importance of men in God's natural order. They're not teaching that men have a value, and because your churches are gynocentric and catering to the female, the males out here, a lot of cases, they are really lost, because they are learning, instead of them learning their value as related to God's natural order, as his first creation, his head of household, and his steward, they are learning to worship women through things like this feminist culture, which is taught in mainstream media, and this feminist culture which teaches men how to submit to women and make women into gods. So that's what happens to many of these men out here. They learn to not value themselves as the way God created them, or to see the value that God created them in his order. They're learning to put themselves in a second best position. And when a man makes himself number 2, he makes himself into his own worst enemy. Lift every voice. Why do I think atheism is on the rise among millennials and the society as a whole? Well, when it comes down to millennials and atheism, I believe that is a direct result of the bad fruit of 2 to 3 generations of people who didn't think about the fruits they were presenting to the world as related to their example of Christ. Now, when it comes down to a lot of people, they weren't thinking about how their representation of Christ was coming across to people, because it is our everyday example of Christ that leads others to believe in the living God. And when they saw most of your so-called Christians out here participating in sins like fornication, going out here having abortions, going out here divorcing their husbands, and going out here and even participating in extreme behaviors like murdering people and stealing from people, it shows people that when it comes down to Christ, most people preach the gospel to others, but they don't practice the gospel of the living God. And this is why I understand that application is more important, because application is what bears fruit. And application is something that you do in your everyday actions. It's just like a reflex. It becomes a part of you. And this is what millennials and your Gen Zs and even some of your Gen Ys are seeing. And they're seeing people not practicing their faith relationship with Christ or following Christ. And because they aren't following Christ, people are walking away from the living God. And that's because of the fruit that was bared by the last 2 to 3 generations, especially the baby boomer generation, which was a part of the feminist movement, and even some Gen Xers out here who became the fruit of the crack epidemic, who I call the children of the corn. And because those people bared bad fruit, this is why we have so many millennial atheists. Luciano, I plan on going on to about 11:30 on this topic, because I'm not going to stay till midnight this time, because I really want to get back to work on my new novel, Eternal Night, and I want to get back to the work on the new ISIS story for 2020. So I'm going to be here till about 11:30. But the topic for tonight, again, is understanding your value as a man. And I wanted to do this one because I really want guys to understand what it means to be a man. And I want them to understand that men have a great value in God's natural order. And I want men to understand that that men have a great value to the living God. Again, when it comes down to men, God created them first. He created them for the specific purpose, and he created them with a specific role. So that role, I believe, is not being taught these days, and that's why so many men today are in crisis. This is why so many men are frustrated and angry, and this is why so many men are self-destructing out here, because they don't understand their role and their purpose in God's natural order. They have been taught in this feminist culture to lower their value, and because they lower their value, they never achieve what God has for them in this life. And that's why so many men are self-destructing these days, committing suicide in some cases when they feel like they can't make anything work, or looking to destroy the lives of others out here. And this is something that people, they aren't seeing as related to men in understanding their value, because we have devalued men in society over the last 50 years. We have really gone out of our way to elevate girls in public schools. We have all of this gynocentric culture in public schools, where boys are taught, again, from an early age to submit to women, and they are taught not to respect themselves as men. They're just taught to please women, and that's why a lot of these guys are messed up out here, because they're taught everything about being a man is bad, and that in order to be a good man, he has to go out here and please a woman. And when you teach a boy that in order to find his value as a man by pleasing a woman, you are teaching a boy that he has to lower his value. And even worse, what you're teaching him is he has to make this woman a god again. And when you make the woman a god, again, you're putting the woman before the living God. And again, that's a violation of God's commandment in the Old Testament, the first of the 10 commandments, and the first commandment that Jesus gave us when he came on the earth. So both of those are things that people aren't really getting these days, especially a lot of boys. And they are sitting there because they've learned this culture in their homes, in their TV shows, in the movies, that they have to put the woman first. And then they're wondering why they never really accomplishing anything in life. Thank you, M. Howard, for the donation. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate any donations you guys give me. It's 48 people watching. Let's get those likes up, because we can get it up to 50. Again, that helps with the algorithm. And yes, that's a right illustrious word for God. The woman was created for the man. She was created to help the man. She was created to be second in God's natural order. She was never meant to be first. But when it comes down to your feminist, she wants to be first, and she wants to put the woman in the leadership role. She wants to put the woman at the head of the family. And again, she was never designed for that role. And when she tries to do that role, she just fails miserably. And we see that with many of the single mother households out here, where these boys are being raised these days. And because these boys are being raised these days, they have this low self-esteem, because that low self-esteem comes from her, because she's trying to overcompensate and trying to fit herself into a role she does not fit. She does not fit into the role of the leader. She can't handle the role of a leader. And every time she tries to do the work of a leader, she just falls apart, because as an emotional being, she gets overwhelmed. And because she gets overwhelmed, she cannot really navigate through her emotions and find a way to solve the problem. And this is why everything they do just doesn't work. Let's see, Jason Eric, how can our value as being a man eliminate the gynocentric power structure in the black community? Well, our value as men is going to eliminate the power structure, because what's going to happen is those men who understand their value, they're going to walk away from these feminist and gynocentric women, and those women are going to die off. So that's going to eliminate the gynocentric power structure, because if they cannot find men to mate with, those women are going to die out, because in order to survive, those you have to either adapt. And when it comes down to the man who understands his value, he's just not going to choose those women. So those women, they would die out in a perfect world, because natural selection would just deal with them, because no man is going to want to ever deal with that type of female who does not respect male power or male authority that was given to them by the living God, because those men understand that their power comes from the living God. Luciano, are feminists good at using racism as a defense mechanism? When it comes down to a feminist, she is a white supremacist. And you have to understand from the jump, feminism is just another arm of white supremacy. And when it comes down to feminists, they are not about helping black people. Feminists want to have a deep hatred of black men, because black men represent the most powerful form of masculinity, and because they don't like seeing any sort of masculinity, they hate black men more than any other man out here. I have to agree with you, Nightingale, Wednesday Nightmare. Yeah, this black church is filled with hypocrites, and what they don't see is that their fruit is what turns people away from the church. They want people to come to church, but what they don't see is it's their example that turns people away from the church. Luciano, how are feminists good at weaponizing information? Well, I talk about that in depth in The Man Crisis. The reason why your feminist is so good at weaponizing misinformation is because your feminist is now controlling the culture. And because she controls the culture, she now can indoctrinate people into buying into her belief system. And when it comes down to the feminist, she has got most women buying into her culture. And as the first teacher of culture, your feminist has people now teaching their children these feminist ideas, and have also managed to actually incorporate them into the Word of God, miseducating people. And it's not until you read the Word of God for yourself that you understand that the feminist has miseducated you. Now, I came into it by not only reading the Bible, but also understanding as the Holy Spirit began to teach me the truth about these feminists. And when I was writing the Thetas back in 2013, I began to understand how they misinform people and how they can just literally mislead you into believing that everything is about the woman, when in actuality, it is supposed to be about people following the living God, and it's supposed to be about the man being first. Jason, I see that myself these days. I even saw it in school. Yeah, when you go into these schools, yeah, you're going to notice that the black students highly respect the black female authority and belittle the black male authority. And that's because the mother, as the first teacher of culture, teaches that from birth. Because according to her, the only authority figure that these children have seen is a black female, and they have seen her go out of her way to belittle the men in society, and the men themselves place themselves in a second best position. So instead of those children learning to respect male authority, what they've learned is to disrespect male authority, because the mother has taught them not to see a man as valuable. And because the men are in a secondary position and they see the woman devaluing the man, what happens is they go out here and believe it's okay to devalue the man. So when they see men, they don't see men as valuable as the way God sees men. They see men through the lens of the feminist. They see the man through the lens of the feminist idea, because in feminism, the man is second best. So that's why they don't respect male authority. They've been taught to do that over 50 years in our culture, and that has become a way of life. And that's why you don't see black students out here respecting black male authority, because it's been demonized in our culture for over 150 years. Oh, the black man is a monster. The black man is no good. And when you have imbibed this culture as a way of life, what happens is you don't learn to see the value of a man as related to God. You learn to see that men have no value, because feminists hate men, and they hate black men more than any other man. M. Howard, I explained the natural order to give people context earlier in the stream, but I can explain it again. Now, again, when it comes down to God's natural order, again, it teaches men value, because, again, what makes a man valuable is the fact that God created a man, and because you are made in the image of God and his son, Jesus Christ, that is what gives you value, and the fact that God loves you gives you value. And as the man, you have value because you have an important role in God's world. And in his world, he made you a man so that you could be his leader and authority figure. He made you to be his steward over the earth, and he has given you great power to go with that great responsibility. So that is what makes a man valuable, and it's the core foundation of what makes a man valuable. But in our feminist and gynocentric society, we are not teaching men their value as men. All we're teaching is that men are bad and that women are good. But that's not what the way God wanted men to learn. He wanted men to learn their value so that they could be stewards over the earth and care for the earth and care for the people who they were put in charge of over the earth. So the natural order is important for a man, because once a man understands his relationship to God and Jesus Christ, then he can understand how valuable he is on the earth, how valuable his work is on the earth, and how that work leads to him having a legacy that can be passed on for the next generation to pick up on. So those are all important things as related to the natural order of men, because it's something that when you understand it, you understand why men are valuable. And again, this was something that is supposed to be taught in your church, but when it comes down to your churches these days, they are compromised by gynocentrism, they are compromised by feminism, and it's all about telling the woman what she wants to hear instead of preparing men to go out into the world and bear the fruit of the Spirit and have that relationship with the living God. Lift every voice. What is the state of the men going their own way movement? Well, the state of the men going their own way movement is that, as I see it, men are just going their own way, and there's nothing really wrong with it. What's happening is more and more men are just going their own way. But as I see it, it is a correction of course to get men back onto God's natural order. Because when it comes down to men, they're walking away, and they're doing it passively, and you're not supposed to see it. So guys aren't speaking on it. What they're doing, because your YouTube now has demonetized so many channels, is they're just not speaking on it here, but they're acting on it. And this is something that many in your social media, they think that they are censoring people, but what they're doing is they're just acting. Because when it comes down to men, it's not what they say that has impact, it is what they do that has impact. And this is where your YouTube and many on social media like Facebook think that, oh, we're going to go out here and have these men's channels taken down. They're going to stop the message, when you're not stopping the message. If you look at the media these days, more and more men are avoiding women at work, and they are putting distance between themselves. And that's not because of listening to a guy like me on social media or reading a blog that I would write. It is because when it comes down to men, they adapt to a situation. And when men adapt to a situation, what happens is they apply things in their life. And you're thinking, oh, we're going to stop these guys from going their own way by stopping the message. But it's not a message as related to men. It is action, because action is the thing that has impact. And Luciano, yeah, white supremacy has always been about gynocentrism. It's always been about elevating white women, because the way they perpetuate white supremacy is by having the white woman teach the culture of superiority. And it's all about them making the woman superior, because it's all about them elevating the woman. MGTOW Thunder, yeah, they do that. They create their own versions of things in religion. Yeah, women do that. They try to revise things to make themselves to create their own narrative. And that's why their stuff never comes to fruition, because what they want to do is change the story. Like in the case of your Me Too movement, what they want to do is change the story and make it what they want. But the whole thing is the facts never fit their stories. Like, for example, with the When They See Us, that Netflix series, that gave us the actual story. And what they wanted to do was like that Linda Fairstein, she wanted to rewrite the story, but the facts never measure up. And when it comes down to men and history, it always survives because it's based on facts, not on feelings. Yeah, white supremacy is about power, but it's also about elevating women, because it's all about them being able to say that the white person is superior, but the whole thing is that they need the woman to teach the culture. So it's a gynocentric idea and a gynocentric ideal. And most people will look at the evil white man and never take a look at the white woman. So that's something that they won't look at and understand the foundation of everything. And again, when it comes down to your white supremacist, that's a person who also does not understand their value as a man. And they oftentimes think that by elevating and protecting the white woman, they are doing what God wants them to do on this earth. And in actuality, these men never actualize their potential. And when they see black men going out here and doing things like building towns like Rosewood and Black Wall Street, this makes them upset. And they'll sit there and say, oh, I'm a good Christian by killing these men. But in actuality, these men really are extremely weak. And they are extremely weak because, again, they are living to please and appease the woman. And they've made the woman a god before themselves, because that's what most racists do. It's always about their so-called women, when in actuality, if you were serving God, you would not be about defending this woman. It would be about you making sure that it was about this woman being a helpmeet and a support to you, not you trying to defend the honor of a dishonorable female. Because this is the big problem with many of these racists, is that they're caught up in this whole gynocentric frame of thinking, and they're thinking that they are serving God, when in actuality, they have made a god out of their own women, and it's that God that keeps them from having that relationship with Christ. So that's something that messes them up. I have not heard any stories of men suing women regarding false sexual assault or sexual harassment charges, but I believe it's something that men need to do as related to it, and it's something that men need to do. Thank you, MGTOW Thunder, for continuing to support my work. Everybody needs to know one thing. The Man Crisis is currently at 199 copies sold, and I'm trying to get up to the 200th sale. So if you guys could go out here and pick up a copy of The Man Crisis, I really would appreciate it, because I would love to celebrate the 200th sale of The Man Crisis. And everybody who gets the word of mouth about The Man Crisis, I really appreciate it. Regarding The show isn't over yet. Lift Every Voice. We got another 10 minutes or so. But The Man Crisis is at 199 sales, and I'm trying to get this at the 200 mark. M. Howard, Man Crisis is available on Amazon.com, along with my other books that are in the 2019 SJS Direct Catalog. The newest one is John Haynes' Dark Succubus. This is also available on Amazon.com right now. It just came out about 2 weeks ago. Isis, All That Glitters is also available on Amazon.com right now. Esteem, Goddess of, and older books like Isis, All About the Goddess, and John Haynes, A Conversation with Death, the first John Haynes book. The price of The Man Crisis is $18 in paperback and $6.99 for digital. So if you want to pick up a copy of The Man Crisis, that is the price of it. I wanted to make sure that it was affordable for everyone. And the reason why The Man Crisis is $18 because it's for 250 pages. It's jam-packed with information. Over 15 years of research went into this book, and over 15 years of me studying all sorts of sides as related to what was making men becoming dysfunctional, because I started with the nice guy, and as I started studying more and more about the nice guy, it was like going into a rabbit hole as related to men. And then as I started studying things like suicides, mass shootings, and the spectrum of violent behaviors, I began to really understand why men were having a hard time over the last 50 years and over the last 30 years, really struggling. Because after I watched the Tucker Carlson report about how so many men were falling apart, I began to really connect the dots. And I went out here and I did my research. Thank you. What's going on, Benny G? Rob IS, thank you for the compliment on The Man Crisis. And I did that book because I wanted men to understand why they were having a hard time. And I also wanted them to understand things as related to their value as men, and I wanted them to understand their value and their role in God's natural order, because that's something that men aren't being taught these days, and it's something that I believe men need to be taught as related to their overall health. Because when I go out here and I do my literature, what I'm trying to do, not only with books like The Man Crisis, in trying to teach men about what's causing them to have struggles, I want to also educate men on how the order is. Thank you, M. Howard, for the donation. The other books that I've written over 60 books, but these are the books that came out this year. Dark Succubus came out just 2 weeks ago. John Haynes' Dark Succubus, which is part of the John Haynes series. Isis, All That Glitters is part of the 2019 catalog. And Esteem, Goddess of, and Isis, All About the Goddess is an older book, came out about 2013. And John Haynes, A Conversation with Death. And I've also written other books in the Isis series, the John Haynes series, and Spinsterella trilogy. And in all of my books, I try to teach things like God's natural order, like I did in a fantasy story I did called Esteem, The Sands of Time. While that was a time travel story about a young John Haynes and a teenage Esteem, and they were in time travel, I was also teaching the value of men. I was also teaching God's natural order for men. And I believe that you need to read material like that, because you have to, when you read material like that and you see the behaviors modeled and you see the culture modeled, what it does is it teaches you how things actually work. And I also do that in other books like the Spinsterella trilogy, like Spinsterella and Spellbound. And I also do it in novels like The Temptation of John Haynes, where I show you the natural roles of men and women. And I believe it's important for people to see the natural roles of men and women modeled and expressed in literature, because once you read material where you see the woman in her natural role and you see the man in his natural role behaving like a man acting like a man, acting masculine, and the woman acting feminine. This gives you an understanding of how you should behave, because when it comes down to media, the media we imbibe has a tremendous impact on us. And one of the things I want to do, the SJS Direct Publishing imprint, is give people not only a positive story about the African American experience, but also give them an understanding of how behavior is supposed to be modeled. Because when you read the right type of literature, it gives you an understanding of those roles of men and women, and it gives you an understanding of the value of those roles. Like, for example, when I do books in the Isis series, like All About the Goddess or All That Glitters, it's just not a fantasy story, but I also show you models for female behavior and how females are supposed to carry and conduct themselves. Same thing with Esteem Goddess Up, as I just show you a model of a woman and how she has value and how she has worth and how she has value in God's natural order and how they have power as in their natural roles. And one of the books that I did that showed the power of a woman in her natural role was Esteem Ascension. This was a book which is the climax of the first Esteem series story arc, where I show there was great power in the role of a woman, and that was something I wanted to do. Whereas with the John Haynes series, I'm starting to show the power and the value of the role of a man. And in saying other John Haynes books like The Temptation of John Haynes and The Man Who Rules the World, I wanted to show how those roles are important, because those roles are something that we're not getting anymore. Instead, we're getting this overpowered female, which is what we're seeing in most media these days, like your superhero movies like Captain Marvel and the recent X-Men, Dark Phoenix, or many of your television shows where we get these overpowered females, which are supposed to be so strong, and we get these soft, emasculated males who are supposed to be these submissive, docile men. And that's not the way God created the order. He created an order where men and women are different, but they have equal value in the eyes of the living God, and they have equal value to God's natural order and doing God's work here on earth. So a lot of people, they're thinking that the woman's role is less than. No, when it comes down to the living God, yes, her role is different, and yes, she is following the lead of the man, but her role has equal value to the living God. Yeah, that's the gynocentrism, Tanner, in that X-Men movie. They wanted to empower the women, but by devaluing the men, and it's something I can't stand seeing. What Bible verse do I meditate on or live by for a productive life? I don't really meditate on any Bible verse. I just try to apply the gospel to my everyday life, and I try to apply the whole Bible to my life, because I believe that the Bible has to be in your heart in order for you to bear fruit. So I try to live by every word of the Bible the way Jesus wants us to live, as related to life in the world. I try to live by the Word of God, not by my own standard. But what they do in movies like X-Men, Dark Phoenix, again, this is not just media. This is about indoctrinating you to a frame of thinking, indoctrinating you to a series of ideas, and having those ideas become your belief system and your value system. And that's what they're doing with this media is they believe that they have to, in order to elevate the woman, you have to tear down the man. And when a man goes out here and allows himself to be torn down and puts women on pedestals, what he's doing, again, is making a woman into a god. And what I'm seeing in most of our media these days is the deification of women. And again, that is a sin in the eyes of God, because that is starting men down the road to idolatry. And an idolater is someone who, again, is making a woman a god before the living God. Again, a violation of both God's commandment in the Old Testament and Jesus' commandment to men. So when you see all of these gynocentric images of these elevated women, it is something that, as I see it, is blasphemous. And yes, I write about Isis, the goddess next door, but her role in my stories is not to make herself into a god. It was about her being a servant to the world. And she's trying to do God's work on earth and be a part of God's natural order. And a woman's role, again, is to serve men. It is not to and go out here and be elevated like the way they are doing in this media these days, where they're trying to make this strong woman when the woman has great strength in being the helpmeet to a man. That's where a woman finds her greatest strength. That's where a woman finds her greatest value. And that's where she finds perfect peace by being a part of the living God's order. I haven't seen every Sandman video, Rob IS, but it's a lot of information. I've been watching Sandman for a while, and there are some that I watch, and there are others that I watch, but you can't really watch them all. The same thing with me. I make videos every day. We both, Sandman and I, make videos every day. So it's a major challenge to get them all. I mean, a guy like me who makes 3 videos a day sometimes and 2 videos a day, it's a lot of work. Thank you, M. Howard, for being the 200th sale on the Man Crisis. I really appreciate it. And I'm hoping that you learned something from the Man Crisis, because I wrote that book because I want men to learn so they can grow and develop and actualize their potential, because God has a lot more for people in this life. He wants you to have that abundant life, and he wants to be able to bless you to go out here and be the man he wants you to be and actualize your potential. So I really want to see guys go out here and do that. That's why I do the men's issues blogs on the Sean James Black Freelance Writer many years ago. That's why I expanded into YouTube, and that's why I do books like The Man Crisis and Stop Simping, because I want men to start being able to actualize their potential and start getting on that road to potential, instead of believing what we have in this gynocentric culture, which teaches them that men are bad, men are no good. I mean, this is something that you are taught every day in this culture, and you don't see how it impacts you in the long term, because you're taught in our culture, in order to be a good man, you have to please women, you have to make women happy. And again, that's putting the woman first when God wants you to put him first, and your focus should be on pleasing the living God. Ace 3567, curious one. You missed a lot on the understanding the value of a man, but you can catch it later on as related to the stream, because the stream is going to be up. I'm about to wrap it up in about a couple minutes as related to this live stream, but this was something that I really wanted to get out here, because so many guys out here, they don't understand their value as a man. And because they don't understand that value, they can't really find their worth in this world, and they can't actualize their potential, because your value, you're very precious to the living God. You are very valuable to the living God. He loves you very much. And what he wants you to do, again, is find your purpose on this earth, actualize your potential on this earth, and do his work on this earth. And you can only do that when you understand your value as a man. And you can't find your value as a man if you're out here making a god out of women, seeking the approval of women, trying to get the attention of women. The only way you can find your value as a man is through a relationship with the living God, and understanding that you have a direct connection to the living God, because you, as a creation of God, made in his own image, and being the first creature made in his own image, you have tremendous value. And I can still answer your question, Ace. Earlier you asked me how a man in an educational facility, again, can encourage and educate young boys? I did answer that question, but I will answer it again. And that is through going out here and being a model in his everyday behavior. That's how you practice. When you go out here and act masculine every day through your everyday behaviors, you provide a model for that boy, and you give him an example of something that he can follow and something that he wants to emulate. Because whenever boys see a strong man, they want to go out here and emulate his behavior. They want to be like that man. And a lot of times boys, when they see a father or another male figure who is strong and confident and secure in his masculinity, that's what makes them aspire to be more masculine and comfortable in their own masculinity, because they see somebody they want to aspire to be like. Rob, I asked, do I think the changes that need to happen, well, it's going to take more a generation or two, and it's a slow process. And I believe that men going their own way is a start of that process, because when it comes down to God, his time is different from our time. So it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take at least about 1 or 2 generations, because as I see it, these beta males, they are an aberration in God's natural order. And I believe that they are eventually going to die out, because when it comes down to the living God and his order, there isn't much of a place for those kind of guys in his order. And again, this is why so many of them are self-destructing, because they can't find a place in God's natural order, because they have become miseducated. They just they don't understand their role. And it's going to take time, but it takes guys waking up. And that's what the red pill is all about. Guys waking up, seeing the truth about the world, and seeing the truth about their purpose as related to God, and seeing the truth about their place in God's natural order. Yeah, Ace, that's how you do it. You have to go out here and, yeah, just model natural masculine behaviors, have that confidence, and you don't have to add base. You just have to be yourself. And when people see you being a man, they're going to see somebody they want to follow, because boys, they see men they want to emulate, and then that when they see you, they get inspired to go out here and do things. Because when it comes down to myself, my brother was the first start. My father and my brother, really, my brother was the first one who showed me masculinity and a model for manhood. And then I saw my father's masculinity, and that's what made me see those models for manhood. And then I started to see other men like Robert Townsend, like Bill Cosby, like the late Dwayne McDuffie, and all of those men, and Spike Lee. All those men were inspirations and influences to me. And they showed me what type of man I wanted to, what type of things I could do, and what I could do as related creatively. Whereas my foundation, my brother and my father, they gave me the model for the type of man I wanted to be overall. Lift every voice. When it comes down to selling books, I just try to sell whatever I can sell. Whether it's up to the customer to choose what they want. If they want to buy a paperback, they can buy a paperback. And if they want digital, they can have digital. I've had people, when I would do certain books like Stop Simping, that was originally just all ebook, but people asked me for a paperback, so I gave them a paperback, and it's been selling fairly well. Same thing with Stop Simping in the Workplace. It's just about what the customer wants. And when it comes down to books, it's just about what the customer wants. And I offer both paperback and ebook of all my books. And that's something that it's up to the customer, whatever they wanted to buy. Yeah, Robert Townsend was a guy who taught me a lot about being a man and going for what you want. And when I watched Hollywood Shuffle, it was a film that changed my life when I was 15 years old, because it showed me, what a man can do if when he puts his mind to it. Because he took credit cards and made a film and had the courage to go out here to do it. And this is something that was very influential in me. Same thing with Bill Cosby, and the same thing with Dwayne McDuffie. Just going out there and getting his stuff out there. That was very influential to me, seeing those men. What was your question, Luciano? I don't know. Well, small government, it is something we could go back to, but it's up to the people to decide they want that. I'm glad you got something for my tribute to my father's video. I did that one because I really wanted to show my honor and respect for my father, and I try to do that with my own work right now. I want to honor him and everything that he did for me, and I want to be able to, pass things on to other people because he passed things on to me, and I want to be able to pass things on to you guys. And his model for manhood is something I want to pass on. And it's something I want to pass on to all of you guys so that you can learn, the value of a man, the worth of a man, because that's something I've learned. Hello from Germany, MV East Coast. Yeah, Robert Townsend continued Cosby's legacy, and I would love to continue Cosby's legacy, and that's something I've been trying to do with my work, and it's something I've been trying to do, because Bill Cosby, the things that he established for Black people, that was tremendous, and it's a legacy everybody, as I see it, should be going out here to build on, because if it wasn't for Bill Cosby giving us those positive images, we wouldn't have a generation of people to see, the truth about Black people. Same thing with Dwayne McDuffie and Robert Townsend. They were the ones who gave us really balanced and humanized images of Black people. And that's all because, again, those men understood their value as men. They understood their worth as men. And they showed the value of a man in building a family, taking care of a family. They showed examples of what manhood is, and that's something that we're not getting in today's media, and it's something that I try to bring to my work in showing that value. I'm glad to see you here, Cortez Forever. I'm getting ready to wrap up this stream in about a minute because I have to get up early tomorrow, and I also want to get back to work on Eternal Night and the new ISIS book that I'm working on regarding wrestling. And I'm going to get ready to wrap this stream up in a minute because I think I have Kenneth L. If I am open to a business deal if somebody offered it to me. It just depends on the terms. I mean, I have gotten offers in the past, but the whole thing is the terms were not what I thought were good for me. So it's got to be about the terms of the business deal. But it's just got to be about the terms. So why do collectivists try to emulate men of other races if they hate a race? And it's because they feel inadequate about themselves. And this is the way they overcompensate. They really like those men, but in actuality, they hate them because they can't be them. So I'm going to get ready to wrap up the stream right about now. And I would really appreciate it if you guys would go out here and pick up The Man Crisis on Amazon in paperback and ebook formats. And if you would pick up other books like The Temptation of John Haynes, which is the start of the John Haynes character's first appearance and the SJS Direct universe. Definitely want you guys to pick up the new John Haynes Dark Succubus, which is available on Amazon. Esteem Ascension. Isis All About the Goddess, which now has a new cover. Isis All That Glitters, Esteem Goddess of, John Haynes, A Conversation with Death. And I would really appreciate it if you guys would pick up these books and support the work, because when you pick up the book and support the work, it helps me out tremendously. A lot of times it's the only way I can pay the bills and be able to eat. So every book that you buy really helps me out. And if you guys could also donate to the Patreon. If you could also donate to the Patreon, that will also help me out, because I'm trying to raise funds to pay for the covers for the 2020 catalog and the ISIS graphic novel I've been trying to put together. And I really appreciate all of your support, really appreciate you guys supporting the streams, and I really appreciate everything that you guys do. And I always try to bring you guys the very best, whether it be one of my books like Dark Succubus, or whether it be one of my videos or my live streams. So I really would appreciate you guys going out and please supporting the books, because the more books that I sell, the more ways I can pay my bills, and the more word I can get out regarding my work. I thank you all for coming to tonight's stream, and I hope you'll be there Wednesday at 12 o'clock for next week's stream. I'm going to try to figure out what the topic is going to be, but there will be a stream next Wednesday, and I hope you'll be there for that stream. Thank you guys again, and I hope you'll be there Wednesday at noon.